For those of you who don't know who Maria Tuskin is, how dare you? Maria is a knitting legend. She was the first person that we had on the show to discuss the social justice knitting stuff. She's great. Tuskin Knits. You can go follow Maria. I don't think she's even in the chat today, which is unusual. But so she sent me this and she asked what I thought about this. It's called the Articles of Unity. Now, she says that Brett Weinstein was pushing this. I don't know. All I've read about this is from this Medium post. So if there's more information about this movement, I don't have it. But I read about this post. It's called the Articles of Unity, a patriotic plan to save our republic. And it says, imagine it's November 4th, the morning after the election. How will you feel? If President Trump returned to office, will you feel that your future is secure? If Vice President Biden is elected, will you feel that the nation is in capable hands? Now imagine instead, this is like the Twilight Zone. Now imagine instead that a courageous, competent pair of patriots take the stage. A team not beholden to any party, nor beset by conflicts of interest. I think you should put the drugs down right away at this point in this article, but okay, Fantasyland person writing, imagine that. A team driven to build a future where our national... I'm sorry, this is laughably dumb to me. A team driven to build a future where our national vision is clear, our plan is wise, and for the first time, every American is fully included. Okay, so here's what I'm not going to read the whole article. Here's what their outlook is. The problem, our government has been captured. People think the parties are corrupt. Yeah, okay, obviously. There's legislative stalemate. Nothing's getting done. Okay, fine. There's a cost to inaction. The solution is the Unity Party. They're going to take candidates, center-right and center-left candidates that kind of co-rule. The candidates have to meet criteria. They must be patriotic, highly capable, courageous. I don't know how they vet those things. I don't know who vets them. I don't know even who gets to decide what left and right is, but whatever. This is the plan. Won't it be a spoiler? No, they explain why it won't be a spoiler. They say, look, most people are in the middle, duh. And people don't care about media, that's fine, and the public's unhappy. The need for leadership has never been greater, yet the parties have never offered less. Okay, and we should, everyone, ballot access, everyone needs to vote, we should remember who we are, we're all Americans, and blah, 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 blah. Okay, I really don't need to explain any more to rip this to shreds. I think this is horrible and stupid. And here, I'll take it off the screen. So this approach... And again, Brett Epstein is brilliant on many levels. I just think this is a brain-dead plan. I think it is a basic bitch proposal to fix the nation, for lack of a better term. This is rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, and I'm going to explain why. There's a bunch of assumptions in here. First of all, I don't even know where to start with the assumptions. Oh, Carrie's back. I'll bring Carrie. So, Carrie, I just read about the Unity Party, which was Brett Weinstein's thing. So, there's a bunch of assumptions. One of the assumptions here is that the parties are somehow very different and that gridlock is bad and blah, blah, blah. So, first of all, the parties have never been very different, at least not recently. They're not actually that different. Trump is different. But Trump's not a traditional Republican. Most Republicans hate Trump. The parties have not been very different. The Democrats are becoming different because they're being converged upon by the radical social justice ideology. That's true. But the fundamental part, like the problem with our system, is not that the parties are just different and we have divided ideologies. And this, he's succumbing to the golden mean fallacy, among other fallacies. This idea that there's this extreme and that extreme, so therefore the middle must be best. Look, at the founding of our nation, the argument was between these two groups of people, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. That's what was going on at the founding of our nation. Those were the two parties. Do you know what the Overton window was, so to speak, back then? I don't think that term was around. But you had the Federalists, Hamilton and that gang. They wanted a, quote, strong central government, but their idea of a strong central government, they didn't even want the Bill of Rights included. because they thought enumerating the rights would imply that the rights you have that aren't enumerated would be violated. So they were like, well, by the way, if you're interested in this, there's a great debate between Michael Malice and Tom Woods about whether Alexander Hamilton was a hero for the cause of liberty or not. But anyway, the debate at that point, the extreme on one side was like basically very, very small federal government, just loose coalition of states versus a stronger federal government. But even those people, by today's standards, were libertarian, right? So that was the Overton window. We've gone so far to the left now that like the idea of like center right and center left and like that's somehow where morality sits and the right way to run our country is it totally lacks principle. It lacks any kind of principle about what's right or what's wrong and assumes that what people want is what's right and that the right thing to do is just compromise. The Ayn Rand quote comes to mind: "Any compromise between food and evil only, or food and poison, only death can win." Right? It's not about compromise isn't the solution. That's a weak answer to our problems, and it's completely lacks any kind of principle. What's wrong with our country is not fundamentally, it's not legal, it's cultural and philosophical. We don't pay attention to the Constitution anymore at all. So if you're going to be like, if culture is going to be massively broken and your answer is to let more people vote and have a more direct democracy, how is that going to fix anything? Especially in a situation where we've got public schools churning out like zombie idiots. You're going to have them go like vote for stuff? How is like I'm really shocked that anyone intellectual would propose something as dumb as this. There's also this assumption that gridlock is bad. I love gridlock because you know what? At least the government doesn't get worse. They sit around and do nothing. Doing nothing is better than anything they ever do. They never repeal anything. They never go back to making the government more free. Like, yay, gridlock. More gridlock, please, because at least we're not getting worse with gridlock. I'd like to repeal laws, but, how the hell are we going to do that? There's this assumption also that corruption isn't like endemic to power. There's this idea that like, oh, corporate America has corrupted the government. No. No one, like corporate America is pragmatist. No one spends money on a politician if the return isn't higher than the cost. And why is the return higher than the cost? Because they have power. They have massive power to regulate. They can regulate you. They can regulate your entire industry. They can shut down your competitors. They can move mountains through the use of force. The government has grown so giant and so bloated that it's worth buying the government. You kind of have to. If you're a publicly traded large company, you're kind of expected to have lobbyists and get people to do it because the government's got their fingers in everything. You can't say the problem is the corruption in America or corporate America. That's not the problem. The problem is the power. The money will always flow to the power because where there is power, someone wants to wield it for their own good, for their own ends, whether those are good ends or not. So if there's this weird assumption about this, there's the assumption that democracy and universal suffrage are some answer to anything at all. I mean, just read the founding documents. Read what the founders were talking about. They were afraid of democracy. Democracy sucks, right? The whole argument about individual rights in a constitutional republic was to protect rights from democracy. The tyranny of the majority is no better than King George. So like the whole thing is just oddly anti-philosophical. And I'm actually quite disappointed in it. And the last thing they have this thing in this article that's remember who we are. No, recapture who we were. Right? We need the values and the beliefs. We need to think like we used to. We're not.
That's just semantics.
It's not semantics.
It is semantics. I think it is because.
Wait, just the last part or the whole thing?
Yeah. What you just said, the difference between remember who we are and
so the last part, remember who we are.
Yeah.
No, because because there's this weird fallacy about like we're Americans and we're unified together and that's who we are. Like that's who we are is irrelevant. Any group of people on the world has special characteristics, and we actually have very little special characteristics because we're like a melting pot. Like what mattered was what we thought and believed. And the text under the "remember who we are" doesn't. I mean, I guess it would be semantics if then they backed it up with what I mean by "remember who you are" is remember the founding principles. But that's not what it says. It's just like, we're regular people who want life to be good. It's a bunch of platitudes and crap, and I'm sorely disappointed in it. So, all right, I'll shut up.
I like it. I think it is inspirational. And I think that obviously Brett Weinstein would be pushing this and supporting this based on, I think it was his recent interview with Joe Rogan that I heard where he talked about this, about drafting a candidate from the center right and a candidate from the center left and forming this new party. I like it for a couple reasons. I'm not saying it's without problems. I'm just saying in general I like it because it is. Well, let's get to your last point. We'll start there. Because you gave.
Well, that's the weakest point. I probably should. I'll just skip it if you want. I don't care.
Well, no. Let me. My brain doesn't. I have you. You just said a lot of things. Let me go where my brain is right now.
Yeah.
Remember who we are versus remember where we came from. I think the reason I say that semantics is because the person writing this believes, I think falsely, that we all still share fundamental principles and that we all still agree on our founding principles of individualism and free speech and a marketplace of ideas and discourse and debate. I unfortunately don't agree with this person that we all still share that. I think that my old ideology, which opposes those things, has become so dominant culturally that there are a large portion of people now, I don't know the numbers, but I know at least in terms of the power they wield, it's very influential group of people who now believe in collectivism, not individualism, who believe in censorship, not free speech, who believe in violence and the use of force, who do not believe in equality, they believe in equity. So I think that this person gets that wrong. In the same way that this book, we've had this same discussion before because we talked about this book I mentioned a lot, Love Your Enemies by Arthur Brooks. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good book, except he's kind of saying the same thing. He's just like this person. He's operating from a flawed premise that most of us still believe and agree on this shared philosophy of individualism, and we don't. So that's one place I guess I agree with you. But
well, I mean, that's the most important. The fundamental premises are the most important part because otherwise, this is a distraction. This is we can rearrange some crap with how we elect people, and ignore the fact that we are culturally corrupt. We have a rotted center as a culture. We've lost our complete appreciation for the values of individualism and the pillars of the Enlightenment. And somehow, the answer to this is magic compromise between lame people on one side and lame people on the other. Like, let's take both zombie parties and compromise between them. It's not going to work. It's just a distraction. And where those parties are right now has moved so far to the left from where they used to be. Like, what's the definition of left and right? Who gets to decide?
But what do you? One thing I like about it is that it is a vision for. I do think it's an idealistic vision, and I don't think it will be successful. Unfortunately, I don't mean to poo-poo it. It doesn't mean I won't support it. If I want to read through all of it, I was just trying to catch up reading it.
Sure, sorry.
But one thing I like about it is that I'm tired of the two-party system. It doesn't benefit us. And
I'm tired of that too. By the way, I agree with that.
Right. And this person is right when they say that both parties have exploited the polarization, and I don't know if they get into it in this piece or not, but I don't really see that big of a difference between the two parties anymore, other than that the Democratic Party is fully converged upon by social justice ideology and the Republican Party is only partially so.
Right. And that's a recent thing, though. They used to be a lot closer than they were. The Dems have kind of radicalized very recently, I think, very recently.
Yeah.
But again, this is not. You're putting the cart before. I think they're putting the cart before the horse here. They're like, oh, we need to get like. The problem with our country is not that we don't have compromise in the middle. That's called the golden mean fallacy. That's not the problem. The problem is that 90% of the people are way too far on the authoritarian side. They've forgotten the principles of individualism. That's the problem. The problem is that the individualism is gone as a pillar. It's gone as part of our society. Fundamentally, at least maybe people feel it, but the capability for defending it, the intellectual tools necessary to defend individualism on principle, even caring about principle, is gone. And like you can't save this country through pragmatism. You need to save this country through values and principles and shifting the culture. And I don't like the two-party system either. And if I believed that there was an individualist party that could rise and take over, I would support it. But
it would be a party of one.
Right. Well, no. There's some people in chat would join me.
No,
but,
my joke is how do you get individuals to come together?
Yeah. But that's my fundamental problem with this. Is it's a waste of time, and it assumes that democracy is good. It's just like, if we can all just vote and agree, like. Democracy is evil. Democracy is tyranny. It's the tyranny of 51% against 49%. Like the entire point of this country was that we needed something to protect us against democracy. That was the point, right? We recognized we needed to have we couldn't have a king. We couldn't believe in benevolent dictatorship wasn't going to work. We had to have some way of people voting on something and being involved in the government, but we needed constraints. And this is not based on the idea that need to be any constraints on government, that all there need to be. This is the European model of just let everyone vote, and whatever is in the middle, that's what we want. The middle ground is the best. And that middle ground, by the way, has been pushed farther and farther. My lifetime, that middle ground has moved to the left dramatically. And that's just a few decades. For the last 100, 200 years, that middle ground has moved fantastically to the left. It's unrecognizable that this would even be the case, where we are culturally. And it's going to continue to move. And it means that middle ground is out of our control. That is controlled by culture and philosophy and the media and institutions like educational institutions. It's out of our control. So why is the middle ground the ideal that we're going for?
I think it depends on how you're defining middle ground. And I'm not...
By his definition.
I think what this person is saying is what I say quite frequently. And I want to address something Amara just said in the chat. She says, so my idea of coming together to find a common ground solution is bad? No, I don't agree. Carter might, but I don't agree. I think the idea of coming together is good. Here's the way I look at it. And this is what I think this person might be saying. Again, I haven't read the whole thing yet. I was trying to catch up with it. The authoritarian right and left are basically these polar extremes. The problem is that the authoritarian left has had so much mainstream influence and holds so much cultural power and is currently has become our dominant culture in the past month. Like, that's how fast things have changed. This has become that dominant. Every corporation's speaking it, all the schools are speaking it, everything. So it has pulled what Carter's talking about. I agree with you, Carter, about the Overton window. It's been pulled towards the authoritarian left, and it's pulled everything along with it in that direction. But I still believe that those of us in the middle, for lack of a better word, those of us who don't fit into either of those extremes, make up the majority of people. It's just that a lot of us are, that's why they call it the silent majority. A lot of us are scared. A lot of the liberals especially are scared. And I think that group of people is made up of all types of people with all types of political beliefs. Some who I would call liberals, classical liberals, others libertarians, others conservatives, others. And I don't think any of the differences between the liberals and the conservatives, I don't think any of those differences matter as much as the fact that none of us are authoritarians. And so I do think it's a good idea to try, for all of us, to try and come together and find a solution.
So I think you would have to successfully change the conversation between one of authoritarianism versus freedom. Like, that would be
right.
You'd have to shift the political scale. And if you
I
can
agree
shift
with that.
if you can shift it to an orthogonal scale, then you can have political parties that are aligned that way. But this does not do that. This is based on. So again, are a lot of people in the middle individualists and anti-authoritarians? I don't know. I think most people in the middle haven't thought about it in terms of principle. And my argument is the fundamental problem, and I don't know that it's solvable very easily. It's certainly not super easy to solve, and it's certainly not solvable through political machinations. But the fundamental problem is we're not having the right conversation. The way to get those people together, the way that you and I, who have differing political ideologies, the ideas, I won't say ideologies, the way that you and I connect is through shared fundamental principles. That's oh, hey, should we have the freedom of speech? Like, yes, that's important. Are individual rights important? Yes, those are important. Okay, fine. If the party is about that, you don't need this left-right blah 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 thing where we just compromise in the middle, because, by the way, not everyone that's slightly center-right agrees with that, and not everyone that's slightly center-left agrees with that. The fundamental thing to tease out here is who wants individualism and who wants authoritarianism generally. Put that on the scale, but then you do have to make a cultural shift towards invigorating and, well, I'll say intellectually arming the individualist camp. And we just haven't done that. So that's why that's why I'm negative on this, because it's a distraction. It's a distraction. It's when people are like, oh, are you saying that coming together and talking is a bad idea? I'm saying that coming together is a platitude that's not actually going to solve anything. That coming together isn't the solution. That you need to have the right conversation. You need to recognize how we got here. We didn't get here because we stopped coming together. We got here because we stopped talking about the right things. We stopped having conversations about what the role of government should be and individualism and individual rights. We stopped having that conversation. And we started having a conversation that was very pragmatic. I want this set of things. I want that set of things. Let's compromise in the middle and we'll each have a little bit of our set of things. That's not principled, and it won't survive. It won't. So that's what I'm saying.
But I think this, again, is just a difference of terminology maybe in what we're talking about, because, and I'm not alone, there are some people in chat who are saying, but we need dreams, Carter, and we need a vision, and we need...
Yeah, of course you need dreams and vision. Yeah, just
right,
not this
but what you're saying sounds defeatist to me, and no. I know that's not what you mean, but it comes off that way because I think we're using different terms for things. I absolutely believe in coming together, and I think there's more of us than there are of them currently. And
Right. But the way to come together is to say what you've been saying and what I've been saying, which is hey, these are the pillars upon which Western civilization was built. Raise your hand if you agree with these pillars. You can disagree with some of the other stuff, but if you agree with these pillars, raise your hand. Okay, I don't care where you're from on the political spectrum. Raise your hand. Okay, that's the party that we need to have empowered. Done. It's not this kind of we need to pick these people and vote on this and have they share the power this way, and if more people would just vote, that would be better. It's not that at all. It's can we offer a place where the principles of the party are identified correctly as the founding principles of the country? And will people abandon the Democrats and Republicans to flee to a place that says, hey, we believe in individual rights fundamentally. We believe in the principles of the Enlightenment. That's it. That's our platform, right? That's the direction we want to move. I know it might sound a little defeatist to some people, and the truth is, I am a little defeatist on whether this system can be saved in America. That's just the truth. It's just why, sometimes people are run for office. I'm I don't. I think that the torch for freedom can survive. I think it can survive only in communities like this. I think it can survive only among people who care about individual rights and individualism generally. I think that is the people in this community, regardless of how much they may disagree with me on issues. In general, that is true. And that's where the torch for freedom will survive. But it doesn't mean it's going to survive from the Pacific to Atlantic Ocean all in one big uniform glob. That might not be true. And it's becoming increasingly apparent that it's very unlikely that that's going to be true. So I'm not saying you shouldn't fight on that level. But if you're going to fight on that level, Fight for principles. Don't fight for like we need some new like political tools to compromise with people. Like that's not going to get you where you want to go. That's not going to get you there because they're just moving. That Overton window is just shifting and shifting and shifting and shifting. And so, that compromise is going to be like what flavor. Eventually, in 20 years, a compromise like that is going to be which flavor of social justice do you want? That's the compromise, right? That's what that becomes. But principles need to be brought into this. This country was not founded on here's a pragmatic way to do things, principles be damned. And it won't survive with here's a pragmatic solution, principles be damned. That's what I'm saying. And maybe sometimes people think that's depressing.
I think this article is inspiring, and I like it better than what you've said. Okay, I'm joking.
It's not an argument. It's an emotional response.
No, I know. Well, guess what? You got to talk to people's emotions.
Well, you parse the article and come up with an emotional argument for me. That will be my request.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't think that I'm trying to find the article again now. Ninja posted the link in the comments, but could you send it to me?
Oh, the Medium article?
Yeah.
I can post it. I can post it in the comments again. Did Ninja posted it?
Yeah, but I lost it. There's too many chats.
Here, I'll put it here again.
There's too many chats. Thank you for the chats, guys.
Yeah, I'm trying to be. Maybe this will piss some people off.
Oh no.
It's fine.
Okay.
My number one, if we just talk about political goals, my number one political goal is to have some place in the world that retains freedom and individualism. Someplace. That's number one. Number two, preferably it's the United States. Preferably it's the whole United States. But that's less important than that it exists somewhere, right? And so, I don't know if it can be the whole United States, but I do know that the only way it will survive is if the defenders of it are standing on principle, not standing on pragmatic compromise between people. Because compromise between a communist and an individualist is death. Because you give up a little bit of your individualism, you do a little bit of communism, the next generation gets raised to become indoctrinated by communists, and now you're compromising again. It's like if you go halfway to a wall every time, eventually you're going to hit the wall. I mean, actually, in theoretical physics, you never hit the wall, but whatever. Eventually, we all know, you try it, you'll bump into the wall, right? So that's what I'm saying. And I want this to be a principled, if someone wants to have a new party and try and save the entire United States, that's fine. But that party needs to be pretty explicit about the principles it's supporting. It can't be like, hey, everyone, the solution is just we need to change some rules and have some compromise between, this side and that side. That's not a solution.
Piece, in the Remembering Who We Are section, this gets to the heart of it. I think that, like I said, this person gets something wrong here when they assume that we all agree on the founding principles, which is why they don't enumerate those principles, because they think we already all agree on them. But they do allude to it. They say, we the people are Americans. We are ordinary citizens from all walks of life. This is the part that's kind of fluff. We're ordinary citizens from all walks of life and backgrounds. We're brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, friends, neighbors, and colleagues from across the political spectrum. We are patriots. That's inspirational, though, Carter. That appeals to people emotionally.
That's why it's in there. I'm not saying this isn't emotionally appealing. I'm saying it's intellectually garbage.
Okay, it's not all of it. It's not garbage. Hold on. The United States is the most prosperous democracy in the world, despite flaws at our founding.
Hold on. It's not. It's not a democracy.
I know. Dark episodes in our history and transgressions against many of our own, our founding principles have stood as a singular beacon of liberty for open minds across the world. See, that's where they're alluding to the shared principles, but they're not enumerating them, because whoever wrote this doesn't realize where we're at, and they don't realize they need to enumerate it and say, we believe in individual liberty and free speech.
Right. So maybe
right to.
Yeah, maybe this is a bad idea because they have rose-colored glasses on about where we are culturally.
Yes, they are.
But it doesn't make it a good idea. It's not I'm not going to say, well, I excuse that part. Yes, if we were in a different world, this might be a good idea. But we're not in a different world, and people don't agree with you that we don't have shared.
If you could correct that misconception this person has, they could rewrite this to make it more powerful and something that you might support. You
No,
think?
because the answer is to explicitly defend and recognize those principles, not to try and fix it through some kind of like, oh, we need to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and have this system. Like, this isn't an architectural problem. If you don't recognize that this is a philosophical problem, you won't win. You just won't. You won't survive. If you don't recognize that this is a philosophical problem that needs to be fixed philosophically and culturally first, no amount of political turning levers and dials is going to change anything. None. It won't work. And this is why we say politics is downstream of culture and culture is downstream of philosophy. This person is ignoring the cultural and philosophic rot in this country and saying, hey, let's change some politics over here. It'll work. No, it won't work. It won't work. And it's not, to me, it's disappointing, not inspiring. Inspiring would be, hey, I think these are the founding principles. We should all support these founding principles. Many of us actually do on both sides of the aisle. Let's have that. Let's have a movement that does that.
That's
right?
what
And we
I'm
can have
saying.
Brett Weinstein come in and people on the right.
Right. This could be that if the person corrected their misconceptions about where we're at. That's all.
Well, I think if they corrected those misconceptions, they wouldn't bother trying to do like, oh, it should have 2 different representatives and we flip a coin and blah, blah, blah. Like, all that stuff wouldn't matter as much anymore. Like, this person's obsessed with compromise as if compromise is some sort of principled stance. It's a compromise is just a fallacy, the golden mean fallacy.
It's a tactical stance. It's a tactical stance. It's a tactical stance.
Right. It's unprincipled. Right. It's just pragmatic. It's just pragmatic.
It's pragmatic.
Right. And without principles, I don't know what the right pragmatic approach is. If you've got the right principles, I don't know what the right tactics are. Right. But I know what the right principles are because all you have to do is read founding documents. Like, they've been written down. We know what the right principles are. Tactically, fine. I think we could disagree on lots of tactical things. I don't know what the tactical solution would be, but I'm damn sure that if you don't have the right principles, it doesn't matter what your tactics are. That's my point.